Cameras, meanwhile, the basic instructions that we have is we have 11 participants. You'll get a thinking time of 2 minutes, post which you are expected to discuss on the topic for the next 10 minutes. And you will be given 1 minute additionally as a group to conclude the discussion. So that makes it a total of 13 minutes. There'll be no intimation once the topic is given to start the discussion. Any one of you can take the initiative and start the discussion by yourself. Similarly, there'll be no prompt given to conclude. You will be expected to maintain your own timers and conclude whenever the time has approached. The topic will be given to you in a while, but before that, do you guys have any questions?
Sir, can you please just remind me the timer?
Right. So once you've been given the topic, you will get 2 minutes to think about it. Then you'll have 10 minutes as a group to discuss about the topic. And finally, you will have 1 minute to conclude the whole argument.
Thank you.
Yes, join. Can I join? So, Ishika, just wait for this GD. We are having two GDs today. You can join in the second GD. Or actually, since we have 28 participants, a couple of people more can possibly join this GD. So, one or two people who can raise their hands right now, please join this GD. We have 11 hands raised right now. If any one or two people who want to join this GD, yeah, we have 13 now. Yeah, that should be good enough. So we'll restrict it to 13 for the first GD, and the rest can join in the second GD. I hope the instructions are clear. Are there any more questions, or can we start with the GD? I think it's good. We'll start. Right now, the time is 10:08, and the topic that is there for the discussion is the whole greater than the sum of its parts? I'll repeat, is the whole greater than the sum of its parts? I've put the topic in the chat for your reference.
Okay, guys, let's start with the GD. The topic given is is the whole greater than the sum of its parts? From the statement, we can actually refer is that if the numerous things that are actually acting as a different force, when they come together, do they actually tend to have more benefits as a whole rather than as something which which are differentiated and are split into many things? There is even a proverb regarding this, that 1 and 1 equals to 11, which refers to unity is strength. And if I were to actually give my opinion on this, then I do think that numerous things were actually combined together and used in order uh, to gain a certain goal, then it is better as a whole.
Adding to this viewpoint, I would like to mention the example of human body where different parts work in conjunction to give meaning and give the life to the body, which showcases that even though different parts may not have a life, but the way they are the way they are conjuncted together gives them the essence of a life itself. And in this way, I can say that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
Adding to this, I'd
I would
like
like to add, I would
speaking
like to
from
add
the
the
business.
point that
Yeah.
in recent times, social media, where we have seen a lot of popularity when it comes to the video making, we have seen making great videos by them. When it comes to the video making, we have seen taking a little parts or moments of their life to make it as a whole video. It tells us it actually emphasizes how important this minute moments can actually be a part of a great thing. So
If
I
we could
think
take the
It
example,
can also,
the sum of its part that as a whole have a great uh, emphasis to it.
Adding
I
to this
believe
point, I
another
would like to
these
give an example
statement can
Definitely.
also be
Adding
seen
to
in
the point,
business.
that,
recently we
for
seen that
example,
there is a AI summit going on in the France, and definitely adding the point, what they said, that the technology works beyond the border, transcending the border. So definitely the structure and the main motive behind the AI summit recently, that the global governance behind the AI. So as a whole, if we work upon the structure or responsible AI for the future, because if a one country doing it is a sum of part of it, we can taking apart from region references for the AI summit. But the global governance is very important because technology works beyond the border. So if we are connected as a whole for the responsible technology in the near future, considering the ethical and environmental aspect to it, so the global governance structure works upon the whole part. So definitely it is relevant to the topic that whole definitely works well rather than some of its
the
part.
whole
This
but
would
I
also
do
statement
have
can
think
also be
relevancy
that we
seen in a
should
business.
take a
If
culture
focus
there is
from
a
our own
people of a
country.
country as well.
Uh,
the
We
individual
we
could
can
can
see
see that
that
people
we
from
can see
different
how
individual
our country has like different cultures and languages, and how diverse it is from Kashmir all the way to Kerala and Kanyakumari. We can see various languages, various things that divide us. But at the same time, we are able to come together as a whole. And how this adds on to the point how the sum of its parts, whole's parts can all come together, and as a whole, it can be much greater. And our country is a good and an amazing example of this.
I
adding to
think,
But
in my
as we are
opinion,
talking
I would
about
like
Uh,
to
that
add
as a
the
whole of the
point.
example
part,
by bringing
when we
individuals
regard
together.
ourselves as being coming from different communities and castes, this creates a divide. But also, if we could consider ourselves as whole as the country is people, then we could definitely surely say that the whole is greater than the sum of its
I
parts.
think, in my opinion, I
the
would
word
like to
whole is
add the point that
already a result of
previously,
the part
when we hear
that we
about the
complete.
sentence, we can find various perspectives to it. But in my opinion, the perspective I see to it is about team collaboration, how every individual in a team might be very good at their part, but when they collaborate, I think a better result or a better
Adding,
out of box inventions are made then when team
I also
In my
think
collaboration
like
adding
opinion,
to
it's
whole.
Reshna's
in
point,
my
uh,
opinion, it's not necessary that whole is greater than parts, because the whole is the result of the parts that we completed. It can be seen in a business where we decide the objective, goals, mission, vision. They are objective is a smaller part which has to be complete to achieve the goal and mission vision. It can clearly shows that whole is the result of a parts that we complete to achieve our target or task.
Let me also add to
Hi.
what Anjali is saying. I am going to put this into example. Let's say if we talk about wealth, only top 1% of the people hold roughly 60 to 80% of the wealth that is available. So that represents that some of them are bigger than. Let me also tell you that whatever work we do, 20% of the work is uh, is actually responsible for 80% of the output. So there we have also another example where some of its parts are greater than the whole. Also, I would like to tell another example. There are millions of stars in the universe, and Earth is only better place to be lived and to be uh, uh, taken up by the human being. So that is also another example where some of its parts are greater than the whole.
I think, in my opinion, I would like to add an example. Like, for example, if we consider our body, so it is comprised of many cells. So each cell might not provide a particular function, but if we combine the cells, then an organ is formed which helps us perform certain kind of tasks. So, in my opinion, the whole is definitely better, greater than the parts.
Definitely,
Yes,
yes.
I also feel like
Obviously, when it
yeah,
comes to
so this one I want to just highlight a point. So actually, so you people are talking about the external parts. One person also said about the body. So I think that if we look at our body, so it and the parts like of a personality and like the person has experienced many things like the ups and downs of life, then failures and regrets, then happiness. I think if we look at it this way, then if we sum it up, then he is a more of a person than some other person who has not experienced all of it in life.
We
that
can
so
also
purity is
connect this
something that
statements.
I
everybody
also
has
feel
Continue,
like
Farad.
that
around the
whole is
globe.
more greater
Can
than
I
its
can I
part,
continue?
because like any product you take, like even example a car, like engines and various other parts make up a car. So I think whole is greater than its parts.
Adding to this, I would
Uh,
So
like to
even if you look at a
include
person's
a point.
life,
The number one point would be that while individual teamwork is very important, when they come together, we find a holistic perspective on things. For case, by taking individual efforts, we can basically find different perspectives and come at a holistic solution. The second one that I'd like to make is we also get a moral support. For example, if we are pursuing something important, but and also we get some moral support, then the achieving part becomes very important and very easy.
I would
But
like to
talking
add the
about the
We
point
can
whole,
that
also
when
connect this
whole
On
comes
a
statement
as
with
a
the
global
part,
political
perspective,
reference.
at
we get to see how BRICS has come together and how they are working towards producing unity in and helping in each other's trade and commerce. So we can see how different countries from different backgrounds have come together here and come together to do which is much better for them and together. So over here we see how some of the parts from yeah, different countries come together and have are working on the benefit of them here. So that add-ons to the part how the whole is much greater than the sum of its parts.
I would
I would
like to
like to
add
add
another
an
I
point
extra
just
here
I
that
perspective
just
on
add
what are the
another
when
point.
solutions
we
when it
So
comes
talk
to
about
the whole as a
we
greater
come up
part.
with different
Because
goals. But
during
whenever the
can I
people,
continue?
whenever as a group we come as a group, we don't also always have the same goal in mind. Also, that brings up the restrictions on other person's perspectives and restricts them in the whole process. But whenever it's as a whole country's goal or as a whole community's goal, we that the goal is being achieved much effectively.
I
I
would
think
This
the time is
statement
just
Obviously,
yeah, I
can
would just
be
up.
like to add
easily
one more
understood
point
I'm
by the
concluding the
example
conclusion.
right
of
here.
one
You can
nation,
continue
So
with the
in
conclusion.
case
and
of
that we
the
decided the
towards the
goal.
conclusion, I'd like to conclude that thinking in both the terms that if the part is greater, then the sum or the whole is greater than the part. in my opinion, after understanding all the perspectives, I think that the whole is always greater than the parts, because basically individual effort can't do that much. How a teamwork can do.
I
So
think
this
I
is
would like to add to it. So, as per our discussion went, so some of the people were saying that the whole was greater than the sum of its parts, and the others were saying against it. But in my opinion, a balanced approach would work here. For example, it is also true that the individuals matter equally to form the whole as a group. So, I think breaking things down into the parts and adding them up might suffice in this case. So yeah, I would like to conclude the
Yes, it
session on that.
depends on the context. All right, right. That's the GD, guys. That's the GD. Done. Yeah. Thank you. All right. So just give me a moment. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. I'll move on with the individual feedbacks, and within those, we'll discuss the common mistakes that people made. Right. All right. So, I think Shubham opened the discussion. Firstly, the discussion was opened a little too late, I felt. It almost took about 2.5 minutes, slightly more than that, in fact, for someone to actually make the first remark. When the time to actually think about it was just 2 minutes. That shows a lack of initiative and high levels of hesitation within the group itself, which does not obviously reflect positively on any of you. So, try to show that eagerness in terms of you want to speak. I mean, I do not mean that if you do not have anything to say, just jump in. That, no, that's not the way to go about it. But uh, in the initial phase of the discussion seemed like it was very laid back, and only towards the end people started coming into it, but they realized it was too late, the time was too less, and there were a lot of conflicts while raising their opinions. So that is an aspect that needs to be considered. While Shubham was introducing the topic, he did break down the topic, so that was a good thing. But the explanation of the topic, that was very shallow. It lacked depth. So maybe you could have gone in a little more depth before passing on the podium to someone else. So that could have been done. Then I think it was Kuber who introduced the
So,
body parts example. We'll take the objections towards the end. Yeah. Okay. So then Kuber talked about that body parts example. That was, I think, fairly okay. Maybe you could have built more on the point itself. So you just stated the example and you left it there. That's it. But you have to relate your example with a certain point, right? So maybe you could have done that better. Then it was Harika, and I did not really capture any essence of that point. So, from what I observed, there was a contest at that point in terms of who wanted to enter the discussion. It was eventually Harika who won the battle, if you want to call it that. But then, if you are actually fighting to speak up and then your point doesn't make a lot of sense, then it reflects really poorly on you. So, if you are actually fighting to make your point, make sure that your point is worth being heard of over other speakers. So please be conscious of that. Then it was Tanishq who made the next entry, I think, and he introduced the technological aspects of the discussion, which is again a good angle to explore. Maybe could have been done in a little more depth, but the idea of bringing in technology was right. Uh, Musab, I think, had a couple of entries, and my problem with that was in both of his entries, the thinking remained around geopolitical dimensions. So you probably could have expanded your way of approaching the topic to other factors as well. So social angles, technological angles, legal angles, you could have explored all of those. But both of your entries were oriented towards geopolitical alignment. So that was a concern. For Ujjwal, so what I gathered from Ujjwal's argument, especially the second argument, was collectively goal is achieved much more efficiently. But how? Why? We realize that, but that's what you need to build arguments towards, right? So maybe a little more explanation was required. You simply sort of restated the motion itself. So yeah, that was that. Then Anjali introduced the angle of business. That's something that I liked. But again, you did not really ended up exploring it as much. So in business, you could have talked about synergies in consulting. So it is only when a corporate group acquires businesses with different strategic advantages and leverages those advantages, it is actually able to multiply its returns over those of a regular investor. So the returns obtained there with that kind of a collaboration is significantly more than thinking of running businesses independently. So those could be angles that you could have explored while talking about the business aspect of it. So Deshna again explained the topic, but my problem is the entry was too late for you to explain the topic. If you're the first or the second speaker, you explaining the topic, that's still okay. And your explanation was okay. But the point at which you made that explanation, that was not ideal. So maybe you speak that point right at the start, or when you're entering, do not speak that point at all. Just give your arguments at that point. Again, you mentioned about how body organs come together, make a greater whole, etc. That was again a good point, but a repetitive point because Kuber had already made it in the start. Uh, then I think Gaurav talked about Gaurav. So Gaurav, you mentioned three examples straight without giving any points to it. Like I did not understand what was your exact point that you were trying to make from any of those three examples. So maybe you had a point, maybe you did not, but you were in either of the cases you were not able to convey that point to the moderator. So that is something that you need to focus on. Uh, Kaushik, I think it was, yeah, Kaushik. So, you entered by saying that you people are talking about. So that shows a very individualistic approach towards how you're approaching this GD. When you're a part of a group, you're there collectively to discuss an issue. You do not use words like you. You say we are discussing this. So be a little more compassionate and empathetic about your peers, surroundings, instead of sort of coming off as a person who comes off in a very aggressive tone, sort of a person who's not a team player. So that should not be the impression to the moderators. So please keep that in mind. Then there was this example that the experiences you've lived, again by Kaushik. So that forms the kind of person you are. And I think that was a well-fitting example. That was okay. Uh, and then there was one point, I think it was Sahil who was concluding first. So he started by saying, I conclude. Again, the same point that I mentioned earlier. You cannot be so individualistic while talking in a GD. You alone are not concluding. It's a group that is collectively concluding. So we as a group conclude. That is the first point. Second, the group did not reach a conclusion. No one was like, all right, everyone did talk about how sum is greater than the whole, but there were a couple of points which also talked about how it is not necessarily true. So there wasn't a consensus reached in the group. So whenever in a discussion you have not reached a collective conclusion, in those scenarios you do not conclude, you just summarize the major points that have been discussed. You do not take a stance, you just summarize everything important that has been said. So that is something that could have been done. uh I do not remember who it was. I think it was Vaibhav or Sahil who actually structured their points. They said that my first point is this, my second point is this. So within that one argument itself. So there are pros and cons with that. So first, the structuring is good. It gives clarity to the moderator. Yes, Sahil, someone has said, all right. So it gives clarity to the moderator, but given the short time constraint of this specific GD, if you see the participants are way too many and the time is less, avoid making multiple points in a single entry unless both of your points are very correlated. If they have a very strong correlation and you can seamlessly transit from one to another, then it's fine. But if they are totally opposing or different points, then try to have just short entries, make one point in one entry and then enter again at a later stage and then make your second point. That will be the ideal way to go about it. So these were the basic feedbacks that I had for everyone. If you have any questions, anyone, please feel free to ask.
But
Um,
sir, as the group was already chaotic, I feel
Mhm.
Sahil did a perfect job in mentioning those 3 points in one go.
Right. So again, that reflects your ability to know, inability rather, to get into the discussion. You'll have to find ways. Like I did see a couple of times there were fights in terms of wanting to get into the discussion. At that point, you need to politely request that, can I quickly make a point, and you can take it up from there, something like that. So I think one of the persons actually did that as well, although that did not get picked up. But
Sir, I was the one.
yeah, right. Shubham tried doing that. So yes, that is the right way to go about it. You might get cut once, like you got cut once. That's okay. But if you repeatedly show the intent of wanting to get into the conversation and you get cut twice, thrice, the moderator is taking note. He'll realize that yes, you have a valid point to make, and he'll mark the others who are cutting you repeatedly in a negative way, and B, he'll probably give you a chance towards the end to make your specific point if he sees that eagerness. But that will not happen if you try it once. If you really think your points are not being heard, you'll have to again be polite about it, but you'll have to try it multiple times.
I was actually trying to make the entry like thrice or 4 times, but I should have mentioned it properly.
Right, so 3 or 4 entries would have been too much for this, because again there were what, 12 minutes and 12 13 participants. So maybe you could have the ideal entries would be 2 entries of 30 seconds or 3 entries of 20 seconds. Those would have been ideal number of entries for this discussion.
This is I was trying actually once or twice only, but for that I speak 3 or 4 times to make the fun.
Right. Fair. Any questions that anyone has?
Sir, I
सर
wanted to.
एक क्वेश्चन है सर,
Yeah.
जैसे आपने मतलब ये तो मतलब जैसे एक थोड़ा सा एक वो लगता है मतलब ऑकवर्ड लगता है, जैसे मैंने एक एंट्री ले ली, फिर मतलब अभी 7-8 लोग रह ही रहे हैं, मतलब चौथे नंबर पर अगर मैंने एंट्री लिया हूँ उसके बाद से 6 लोग और ही रह रहे हैं, मतलब अभी वैसे मुझे अब कुछ पॉइंट को ऐड करना बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट है, लेकिन बट उस समय मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि यार मतलब दूसरों को बोलने देना चाहिए, मतलब जो लोग रह गए हैं, तो अपन बोलना चाहिए कि नहीं मतलब इस टाइम पे?
राइट, गुड क्वेश्चन। सो अगर आपका फोर्थ ही एंट्री है एंड आपको सिक्स्थ पर्सन अब बोल रहा है और उसी टाइम आपको बोलने का मन कर रहा है, तो उतना शॉर्ट स्पैन में मत बोलो। बट अगेन यू कैन नॉट वेट फॉर एवरी सिंगल स्पीकर टू स्पीक। सो इफ यू हैव अ फोर्थ एंट्री एंड नाउ द eighth or the ninth speaker is speaking and you've just made one point and you have a very good point to make, then उसके आगे try to come into the discussion. It's okay. If you're not doing it repeatedly, जैसे अगर सेकंड पॉइंट भी बोल दिया, अब थर्ड पॉइंट भी तुम्हें जल्दी बोलना है, इफ दैट्स व्हाट यू ट्राइंग टू डू, देन इट विल लुक बैड। बट इफ यू हैव जेन्युइनली गुड पॉइंट्स और तुम सिग्निफिकेंट अमाउंट ऑफ गैप दे रहे हो, देन इट्स ओके।
अच्छा सर, मतलब जैसे मेरा फोर्थ था, अब फिफ्थ नंबर पर जिस बंदे ने बोला उसको पॉइंट का मतलब मेरे पास कोई एग्जांपल है, फॉर एग्जांपल किसी ने मेरी जस्ट बात बोला और उसका मुझे बहुत अच्छा पॉइंट ऐड करना, फिर मैं लेकिन
राइट
एट्थ या नाइन्थ में बोलूंगा तो दैट विल कि ऐसा लगेगा कि यार ये तो
करेक्ट
मतलब कहाँ की
करेक्ट
बात कहाँ हो रही है।
right. So it might seem disconnected, but then it becomes your responsibility to again sort of bring the discussion to that direction again. So you can say something like revisiting the point that was earlier discussed. I would like to add on to that. ऐसा करके कुछ एक छोटा सा बिल्डअप देके वापस लाओ कॉन्वर्जेशन को उस टॉपिक पे, and then give your example towards it.
Sir,
एक
during the
क्वेश्चन और
introduction.
छोटा सा, हाँ पूछ ले शुभम, पूछ लेते हैं।
Sir, during the introduction part, like after introducing the topic, we have to put our perspective too on the site. Yes, like I try to put my perspective and then I like sort of connected an idiom with the topic in order to better explain it.
Yeah, right. So the objective of the introduction is to not put your perspective, although you can do that towards the end in one single sentence if you really want. But that is not the main idea. The main idea is to first explain the topic and then break down the different ways in which you as a group can approach this topic. So maybe these are the 5 ways through which we can explore this. Here's the social significance of this topic. This is something that we can explore in depth. You can just throw in ideas, throw in 4 or 5 ideas for the group to actually discuss on, and then the group can pick up on any of those ideas and take it forward. So that
Like
is
hooks.
the way you correct
Hooks.
सर
in different
एक
directions.
क्वेश्चन है मेरा,
Uh,
एक और मेरा क्वेश्चन है, जैसे मतलब आपने अभी एक दिन और लिया था 2-3 दिन पहले जीडी, तब आपने एक
हम्म
पॉइंट, मतलब मैंने आपसे उस समय भी पूछा था कि जैसे मतलब मैं जैसे फ्लो में बोल, मतलब मैंने अभी होल के लिए बोल रहा था मैं, मतलब
हम्म
मैं होल के लिए बोल रहा था कि होल बढ़िया है, बट जैसे
ओके
अंजलि ने एक पॉइंट मतलब बहुत समय बाद काउंटर आर्गुमेंट किया था, मतलब सब होल पे ही बोल रहे थे, फिर उसने बोला कि नहीं सम इज आल्सो इम्पोर्टेंट, तो तब
हम्म
मेरे दिमाग में क्लिक हुआ कि यार सम पे भी मतलब किसी ने ज्यादा डिस्कस किया नहीं है, और सम पे अगर मुझे
हम्म
कुछ एग्जांपल आ रहा है तो कैन आई टेक अ स्टैंड अगेंस्ट माय अर्लियर स्टैंस। उस समय भी आपने मुझे बोला था कि मतलब
हम्म
बोल तो सकते हो, लेकिन कुछ अगर तुम्हें ऐसा लग रहा है कि तुमने पहले वाला पॉइंट अच्छा नहीं बोला है, तब आप बोल रहे हो इसमें क्या किया जाए, मतलब मैं उसमें भी था, डाउट
राइट
में था,
राइट
फिर मैंने नहीं बोला इसलिए।
करेक्ट करेक्ट आई टेल यू। तो इसमें क्या करो, द आइडियल वे टू गो अबाउट इट इज शुरू में कोई एक स्टांस लो ही मत। नाउ इवन इफ यू आर मेकिंग अ पॉइंट टुवर्ड्स एनी स्टांस, यू कैन ऑलवेज देन से बट इस साइड पे भी देयर इज सिग्निफिकेंट पॉइंट्स टू डिस्कस। ऐसे करके थोड़ा ओपन एंडेड छोड़ो इनिशियली,
ओ,
सो दैट आगे जाके जब
अच्छा
तुम्हें
अच्छा
बाकी साइड से पॉइंट्स आए यू कैन स्पीक दैट। एकदम ये नहीं लगे कि पहले कुछ और बोल रहा था अब एकदम ऑपोजिट बोल रहा। तो वो थोड़ा स्कोप छोड़ो।
अच्छा।
ठीक है।
हाँ मतलब ऐसा बोल सकते हैं, इफ आर टॉकिंग अबाउट द वन साइड दैट टेक्नोलॉजिकल एस्पेक्ट भाई गवर्नेंस की जरूरत है, बट देयर आर अदर साइड्स दैट आवर अदर पैनल
Correct,
मेंबर
correct.
मस्ट डिस्कस
Right,
अबाउट इट।
right, 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 correct. So, guys, last 3 minutes for this discussion. So,
मुझे
any
एक
more
क्वेश्चन
questions?
था।
हाँ,
सर जैसे लास्ट में जो कोई आई थिंक साहिल ने कंक्लूड किया, तो फिर
हाँ,
मुझे उसके बाद फिर मैंने एक बार दोबारा कंक्लूजन दिया, क्योंकि
yeah.
मतलब ऐसे शायद बोला गया था कि कंक्लूजन में मतलब थोड़ा सा बैलेंस्ड अप्रोच रहना चाहिए। तो मतलब कंक्लूजन
Mm-hmm.
में बैलेंस्ड अप्रोच ही रहना चाहिए कि लाइक वी शुड टेक साइड्स एट द ड्यूरिंग द कंक्लूजन पार्ट।
Right, right. So if your group has taken a very clear stance, कि नहीं, this is the way, this is the direction we want to go forward in, then you can take a stance on behalf of the group. But if the group has not really reached a conclusion, then you'll have to be a little neutral and discuss both the aspects. Again, उस केस में आप conclude नहीं करोगे, उसमें आप summarize करोगे. Conclude is when your group has arrived at a actual conclusion. Also, the fact that you repeated like repeated nahi, but you made an entry after the conclusion was already made was not good. Once someone has already concluded, you do not
लाइक
add points on top of
मतलब मेरे
that.
को ऐसा लगा कि मतलब वो थोड़ा सा वन साइडेड कंक्लूजन था, तो
Correct,
फिर
correct. But you are not there to make things right. You are there for your set of entries and marks and discussion.
ओके
ठीक है?
मतलब
तो you do not have to supersede another person's conclusion.
एक और क्वेश्चन था।
Yeah.
जैसे आपने मतलब इंट्रोडक्शन में पिछला कोई क्लास में हमें ऐसे बोला था कि अगर कोई बंदा अच्छे से मतलब इंट्रोडक्शन ऐसे नहीं कर रहा है, मतलब
Hmm.
एक साइड ले
Correct.
रहा है,
Correct.
देन
Correct. Correct.
another person can start the introduction.
True, true, but that is valid for the second or maybe the third speaker, not for someone who's coming in fifth, sixth, seventh.
Okay.
So unless the GD is going completely in a wrong direction and मतलब पूरा ही off topic जा रहा है, then you're trying to bring it back. That's a different thing. But if you're just trying to introduce the topic and break it down, if the first speaker hasn't done a good job, the second or the third speaker can also try.
ओके,
Yeah.
बट वो
Yeah.
कंक्लूजन के केस में नहीं एप्लीकेबल है, राइट?
Correct.
So
Also,
can I ask my question if I'm not overriding?
yeah, just last two questions and then we'll wrap up. So yeah, Gaurav.
The 3 points I discussed that was related to I was making my choice towards some of the parts are greater than the whole. So that's why I gave those three examples of people having 20% of the. So how could how could I have conveyed it better so it could have been picked up by the panelists?
So you gave three examples to show your stance. You need to realize that आपके stance में और आपके points में एक difference होता है. You make points to support your stance. What you did was you gave examples to support your stance. आप examples देते हो to support your points and your points support your stance. Stance is whether you stand for or against the motion. ठीक है? You give points to justify whether you stand for या against. ठीक है? So your points support your stance. Your examples support your points. What you did was you used examples to support your stance. बीच में वो points वाला intermediary चीज था ही नहीं. तो यू हैव टू मेक अ पॉइंट एग्जाम्पल से कि हाँ इस एग्जाम्पल से मैं ये कहना चाह रहा हूँ और ये कहने की वजह से मैं कह सकता हूँ कि होल इज ग्रेट या जो भी whatever your stance is. ठीक है.
Yeah, I understood. Thank you.
Sir,
Yeah, any, yeah,
सर
yeah,
एक
yeah,
it's
please.
last question. Sir, how to take
Yeah.
on these abstract topics? क्योंकि इसमें I don't believe कि pastel approach we can.
No, I think pestle will be very applicable here. Like it might not be applicable everywhere, but इस
Yeah.
specific topic में तो बहुत easily apply हो सकता है. You can look at it through any angle. Like businesses, in fact, लोगों ने किया भी. People brought in the angle of business, technology. More could have been done. Like the economical aspect or the aspects of sustainability. Those could have also been brought into the discussion, which wasn't done. बाकी अगर कोई genuinely abstract topic है जिसमें आपको नहीं मिल रहा है spelled से कुछ भी, then try building interpretations. That is the only way. तो जैसे टॉपिक है black is the new orange, इस टाइप का कुछ है,
Okay.
तो try to think about all the different things that black stands for, all the different things that orange stands for, and then देखो कि किसको किस चीज से आप रिलेट कर सकते. तो try to think of these topics, the words given in topics as metaphors, and try to think कि अगर ये चीज दिया है तो इस चीज से मैं किस किस चीज को रिलेट कर सकता. ठीक है.
Okay.
So that can be one way in terms of how you can actually think about ideas there. I wanted to add solutions on OW to pivot to whole, but didn't get the chance. All right, so yeah, you'll have to try and make yourself held there. Okay, so this is the GD. You guys can stay back for the second GD if you want, or you can drop off. We'll be starting with the second GD. Guys who will be participating in this one, please raise your hands. Yeah, thank you. No worries.
Also, basically, we want some new names. So if you want to participate, just raise your hand.
Right. So we have 27 people in the chat and like 7 or 8 people have raised their hands. So come on. Okay, it's 10 right now. We'll be closing at 13 or maybe 12. So 2 more people if you want to join in.
Also, guys, cameras on.
11. Yeah. 11. All right. So seems like it's just the 11 people who want to be a part of this discussion, and that's all right. We'll close at that. Okay. So I hope everyone was there for the first. Can I join, Tanejan? Yes, you can if you want. We can have 12 people to add for 13. So there are 11 right now. You can be the 12th person. I can see 11. Yeah. So I hope everyone was there for the first discussion. You know the ground rules. I'll repeat them again just for your reference. I'll give you a topic. You will have 2 minutes to think about it, post which you can start your discussion. Sahil, yes, you can join. Post which you can start your discussion. The discussion time will be 10 minutes, and post that you'll get 1 minute to conclude. So total of 13 minutes. There'll be no intimation in terms of when you want to start your points or when you want to start the conclusion. You can move at your pace, take initiative, and yeah, be proactive without being disrespectful to the room. Does anyone have any questions before we start? No. All right, great. So I'll tell you the topic. The topic for you is, should online content be regulated? If yes, in what specific ways? Musab, we've closed at 12 now, so we'll not be taking more entries. Yeah, I'll repeat the topic. Should online content be regulated? If yes, in what ways?
Hi, I would like to start. So, the topic for today is, should online content be regulated? Online content includes several things, which include news for the day, uh, videos of celebrities, of people that they have been posting, could range from a variety of things, from products to people. uh, Specifically, coming to the topic, I believe yes, that it should be regulated on a basis that that content nowadays related to either politics specifically can go wrong, because a lot of fake news come because these content is not regulated. We tend to see a lot of content that is not even true, and which makes it very important for these things to be regulated first before people can post them, because this creates a nuisance for people who are a part of the society.
I completely agree with her, and I also believe that online content should be regulated, and the censor board should apply some norms on the content that should be that is published on online. So first, there should be some regulations, and the first is stringent rules should be applied to the content. A committee should be formed, and the committee should look into it, what type of content should be there or and what should not be there, and that committee should include all the people like some people of the society which are the representatives of the society, and they should take a call on that. Also, there are like various content nowadays which can harm the society in a certain way, especially the younger generation. We can see in the younger generation, people are kids and the adolescents are particularly affected by this type of content, and it can really harm the society.
I would like
I
to
like
add
to add something
examples
very
to
important to this.
for
I think
example of my
any
fellow
content
panels.
which is spread online
As
should
we
be
have seen
regulated.
the case of
It should
India's
be
Got Latent,
regulated if
we have
it's
seen that
if it is
there
responsible
was
for
vulgar.
spreading some sort of hatred or violence. But I think sometimes it also makes a curb on freedom of speech, which should be taken care of. So, number one, there should be some sort of self-regulation, as in people should be taught moral values and education, just in order to ensure that there is self-regulation. And secondly, there can be things like, for instance, an AI-generated mechanism that does the fact check when every video is uploaded on YouTube, which is related to some kind of fact or news. If the AI mechanism finds that it is within the fact checking, as it is factually correct, then it should be posted further. Otherwise, it should be stopped.
I would like to
We
add.
have seen the
Uh,
case of India's Got Latent, that there was vulgar speech during the show. So my point is, censorship should be there to regulate these type of contents. Also, the case of Bumrah getting injured, a news fake news which was spread out, was wrong, and Bumrah also condemned it on Instagram. That's all.
I would like to give examples of the point my fellow members made, like the allegations on the US election of to manipulate a winning side. There have also been prior allegation of manipulation of masses by use of the social media in India's election too. Though these allegations might be wrong, but we do also know that social media plays a large role in spreading information and changing the thought and alignment of masses. So I think some form of regulation is required to make to make sure that the content that is spread is actually factual and does not make people align people in a particular way.
In
to
this
bring
regard,
a
I want
fresh
to add one
I
perspective.
thing.
would like to explain that there is a certain type of technology which can regulate this, and we can in the present scenario, everyone has heard about content moderation. So companies like Genpact and KPMG, are doing that they have the technology which can sort of detect if the video is fake or not, a deep fake and all these video which are prevalent on the prevalent on the internet. These technology can help better to reduce the volume of these type of videos and can better help in generating the true news to the people.
To bring a
I
I
fresh
like to add a point
perspective
here.
on
I
this
like to add a
topic,
Stating
point
that
here.
it
A
is
very
very
I
important
important
point, I
to
think so, from the
regulate on a
government side.
personal level
A very
as well.
important point, I think
Like
so, at the
people
government
should
side
be
that
having
yeah, go ahead,
people
Ishika.
should have a moral value on their own as well, and people, specifically adults, should make sure that their children on their own personal level are also not using such content and should regulate from their own perspective and level as well.
I think so.
I think to
One
the
important
point
point
which
I would
Ishika
say
really
here
said,
because the
I
government.
think it is very, very
Now would
valid.
like to suggest to that.
And one of
Now
the
would
things
like to
which I
suggest
would
to
like
that.
Go
to,
ahead. Why
I would
not?
like to conclude my point, please. Then you can
Go ahead.
please
Go ahead.
continue. So I would like to add to the point which Ishika really said. Like, I have children at my home, and my parents, what they really do, they put on the child. You know that YouTube has a suggestion for that. Ki, you can on the child protection app, or YouTube has a different app which is called which is specially made for kids, but the content in that, even it is not regulated. Such content is put up there which is very vulgar, their subtitles are very vulgar, and children are still not away from them. And I think it is really needed for every other app, be it Instagram, be it Facebook, be it YouTube. I think every other social media app is not really regulating their content, and it must be regulated. An authority must be there to actually look into the matter of fact.
I would like to
Ladies
add
and
a
gentlemen,
perspective
I
to
want
it.
to add
I have a
just
good
one
point
point.
here.
this
Moral
topic.
aspect,
We have
everything.
already
Don't
talked
I
forget
about
We are
self-regulation.
forgetting
the
that
We
not
have
government
already
everything
is
has
talked
to be
coming
about
up with a data
self-regulation
a
protection
lot
bill,
of
and
in
I
things.
think
an
so it is
AI-generated
very aligned
mechanism.
to the
So
topic
if
here.
there are
No,
any
And
just
will
two
additional
words are
policies
used
government
over
come
added,
up
here.
with a
That's why reason. Now would like to suggest
the
it that
government come up
now
the
would like to
government come up
suggest
with
it
a
that
data
let me
protection bill,
conclude the
which
point
is
after.
very important, I think so, for this discussion, because government come up with a data protection bill. From the government side is very important because the topic of the DGD is regulated in what ways. So from the government side, the data protection bills are we can say considering for more than 3 years from I think so, yeah. And there is a one important term that coined in the data protection bill is data fiduciaries. So they are the officers or the organization appointed them in their organization to taken care of the digital content and how it regulated. And the one more point I think so in the data protection bill is there that stringent measure there are there for the data breach. So it's very important point the government come up within the data protection bill. And apart from it, there is a we can say that the mandate to store data in India itself. To content the online regulation, government come up with the thought that we have to restrict the data movement in India itself, and they are also planning with the NPCI and RBI to work on it. We
I
can
would
add
like to bring a
more
To
new
point
bring
here.
point
a
of view
I
in
fresh
want
this
to add one
perspective,
point here
I
as
wish to
well.
add
group
that
discussion that not everything is about factual. A lot of thing it can be manipulative in other sense, like the stock manipulation and bringing people to Ponzi schemes and other false schemes. These two need to be regulated, and they can't be just regulated on their factual basis. So moving forward, I like the group to discuss how can we regulate these type of
I
content.
think education and
Now would
awareness
like to
would play a
suggest
very
it
very
that
important
now
role
would
into
like to
this.
suggest it that
The
most
schools
of
and
the
colleges can
country
actually have
now would like
courses
to
etc. or
now would
programs
like to
which can
suggest it.
actually educate people on gambling sites and the bad effects of these gambling sites, and the people who are out there on YouTube and other Instagram etc. who are spreading information about misinformation rather about the stock exchange etc. So education and awareness can be one measure through which we can counter these kind of things.
I think the
even
big
balancing.
corporation should also be blamed for this. Like Facebook, Facebook is there, Netflix is there. These corporations are, in some sense, promoting this type of content. These corporations should be regulated, and government should hold on to these corporations. Should be blamed for this. I think we should start discussing like how these corporations are promoting these type of content. Yes,
These are
please.
only
I
promoting
I would have
as
one
the
point
single
here,
content
a
across
little
Now
any
would
shorter
like
point
to
platform
here.
will be
the
very
another
difficult
point
We
that
can move.
because the
now would
scale of
like
that
We can move
content
now
is
would
forward.
like to
quite
the another point that
large in
most of
that
the
sense.
people can discuss about the
now back to the another
Go
part
ahead.
that most of the all over the discussion, all the people discuss about the content transfer through the all over the content should regulate. But one of the country like Australia, who can introduce a new rule to the towards the teenager who can control via social media through the parents. So that's why the such type of initiative can help to the bad types of content to.
Yes, I would like to add a point in this that not only government regulations will help, but also the parental regulations can also be very important because the child's first education starts with its home. So if the parents be a little strict about the content, the type of content the children watch, so it can also help in a greater way.
I think it has
Well,
already been
I
discussed
will
in
also,
self-regulation.
I think we should
If there are any
summarize
new
all
points,
the
please
points
add
we
them.
have discussed till now. The examples which we have discussed is a children's that need censorship. The committees should be formed. AI should be used in regulation of these things.
Education and
Anyone else
awareness.
want to add?
I
I
would
want
like
to
to add
add one
I
another
think
point,
point
I
so.
think, which is very
because
important, that
online content moderation is very imperative as we are seeing as well as social media has become the main stream for every citizen to get the news and to understand what is going on in the particular country as well. So I think media to have that censorship is very essential to have that content moderation for particular categories as well as kids and youngsters are have become more addicted towards the social media platforms, and social media has also become the platform for misinformation as well. So I think yes, as we have also discussed about that we should have that make parents aware about how they could help their kids to use in a better manner, because in today's environment we think that uh, digital use is also essential. So I think that is also an
I
I
think
would
so.
like
I
to
think
Yeah,
we
yeah.
should
We are
conclude
running out
at
of
now.
this
time, so we
We
point,
are
can
running
like
out of
conclude.
time.
We can
at
conclude.
the
So,
education
Means
level,
with,
one
at the
is
with
school
saying
your
that
level,
permission, can I
community
conclude?
guidelines should be
teachers should
modified in that sense.
start teachers should provide
I
education
think,
and
gentlemen, we should conclude. We
Yeah,
have
yeah.
discussed
Because
all the
we are running
points.
out of time. Yeah,
See,
I
we
can
have
conclude. Yeah.
discussed that the online content is everywhere through social media, through OTT platforms, etc. There is good content, there is bad content, there is news, there are a lot of things. The one thing we need to ensure is there should be some kind of regulation. Either it should be not either, but it should be through government bills and laws. It should be through self-regulation, as in parents and teachers intervening. There should be education and awareness. And also, one thing that we should take into consideration is not everything is bad on social media and OTT platforms. So sometimes political parties tend to curb the freedom of speech on the name of regulation, which should not happen. So freedom of expression should not be harmed in the whole thing. This is what we want to conclude, and this is what we have in our GD. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Actually, you missed the
So,
point of AI in
no,
regulation.
Ayush, we're done. We're done. We're done. So every one of you who did not get to make a point, any point, and if you have any points that you would like to add, please speak. But please only speak if you have not spoken in this discussion yet.
Sir, I wish to add that different online platforms such as YouTube or other Twitter, which is now X, should also regulate and check uh, whether their paid content is on some biases or whether on political ads or not. Sponsored posts and political ads should also be double checked.
Okay. Is anyone else left or is everyone done?
Sir, I think online content regulation cannot be done on a very wide scale because the 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 content that is being uploaded on various channels of social media or on the internet as a whole is very vast, and it's quite difficult as one member also added that we will have fact checkers and everything. It'll be very difficult. It will not be able to regulate every single content that is there across the internet, be it be with the help of AI or any human fact checker as well.
Okay. All right. Is anyone else left or is everyone done?
also, like, I would like to add that moral
No,
value should be.
Hemant, you've already spoken. So anyone who has not spoken in the discussion?
Sir,
I think that's
also that
everyone. Yeah.
people should
Yeah,
be
Abhishek.
aware about their rights. If they feel that they are being cyber bullied, they should be well aware of their right, and legal framework should allow such individuals to seek justice more effectively.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So, starting with the feedback for this GD, this wasn't particularly a good, will recording be available? I have my PM. There's someone from the Prep team, if they can take this question up. Will the recording be available to them? Uh, so, yeah.
Rahul, I believe recording is just for like if you want to upload it on YouTube or.
Okay, okay. So there's Ayush Kumar in the chat. He's asking for recordings. So please coordinate with him if you can. Yeah. All right. So moving on to the discussion. So, or rather the feedback. So this wasn't particularly good GD, and there were multiple reasons for that. Let's start with the first one. Ishika, I think when you introduced the topic, you were a little rushed. I'm not sure if this is correct, but I do not really think you gave the actual 2 minutes for thinking. You rushed into speaking the points. So that is a concern. Then again, you started with giving your opinion in the introduction. I have tried putting this point forth even in the previous discussion where I mentioned that putting your point across, if that's all you want to do, then do not start. Come second, come third, and then start putting your points. But if you're starting, your objective is not to put your points through. Your objective is to lay down a structure, first break down the topic for the group to understand, and then lay down a structure for the group to discuss upon and build upon. So that should be the idea. Am I clearly audible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. All right,
Yes.
all right. So, right. So, Ishika, that is something that could have been done. Also, your introduction was a little too long. So, you were the problem with that it was you were not even giving a structure. Plus, you spent a lot of time explaining your opinion only. That was something that should have been done in your second entry. But effectively, you clubbed two of your entries, that too in your opening remark. So the opening itself, the foundation wasn't very strong. Then Hemant came in and he talked about committees should be formed, which is okay, which is not a problem. But then again, you need to go deeper into that. What do you mean by a committee? Who should be a part of that committee? Why those people only should be a part of that committee and not everyone else? How will you ensure their moderation, their objectivity? So a little more depth to your arguments was required. Then you also made a point about content moderation later, and I think that was a fair point to make. Uh, Niranjan came up with a few examples at the start, which were bang on. Latent was obviously the most trending thing. If you bring up examples from current affairs, that's obviously a plus point. He also mentioned about AI fact checking, which was also a good point. So, good couple of points to begin with. Although later on, Niranjan, Kunal, and Tanishq, you all clearly seemed like you were trying to bully the discussion, which will, trust me, it will not go in your favor. Tanishq also had some really good points to pitch in. So he talked about the data protection bill, also the data fiduciaries, that was also relevant. But if you come off as someone who's not very cooperative, making good points will not help your cause. So you'll have to be a little more cooperative and a team player. This is the general feedback specifically for Niranjan, Tanishq, and Kunal. Tanishq, you also talked about mandate to store data in India, which is again a good point, but I, as a moderator, could not see the relevance of that point to the given motion. Maybe there was some point, but you'll have to build that connection for me to understand. As you stated it, there seemed no relevance to me in that moment at least. So that's that. Aditya brought in a couple of good points, particularly about US elections. I also like the structure in which you put your point. So although you first stated your example and then made the point out of it, the ideal way would have been you state your point and then state your example. But still, you did both these things and you explained the rationale behind the point that you're making. So the overall structure of your point was fine. Uh, Priyal. So again, at one of the stages, you said something like Ishika said, which you should avoid doing this. I'm saying this again. You should avoid taking the names of any of the group members in your group. What that will do is that will create an impression in the mind of the moderator that probably Ishika is someone important in the group and everyone else is building around her point. So you are unnecessarily giving your competitor an extra advantage. Why would you want to do that? As the fellow panelist, as the fellow group member, you can use terms like these, but do not mention names directly. Also, there was one point wherein there was a significant number of people wanting to get into the discussion, and you said that I'd like to conclude my point, but at that point you hadn't even started your point. So be very mindful of the words that you are actually choosing to speak. You can what you said was okay, like the intent behind it was okay, but you're not there concluding your point. You haven't already spoken for 30 seconds, you're just entering. So can you please let me make my point and then we can take it from there, something like that, but not conclude my point. So just be mindful of that.
Okay, sir.
Then it was, yeah, then towards the end, Kunal had an example regarding Australia, and I think that was very valid. That was well taken. Uh, Kashish finally got a chance to speak towards the end, but this was my concern both with Kashish and Abishi. When you got your chances to speak, you failed to capitalize on it. So Kashish got it organically within the discussion, Abishi got it after the discussion. But in both the cases, the moderator wouldn't have felt that yes, you had some really important points to add, and maybe hearing you would have added to the discussion. The points were again repetitive and in some or the other form either already discussed in the discussion or something that was very generic, which was common sense. There was nothing intuitive about it. So if you've just tried to speak as the first speaker and then you've made, or rather the second or the third speaker, because the first speaker does not share their opinions. But if you've said those points as the second or the third or the fourth speaker, they would have been okay points because you're just starting. But when you're making points towards the end, you will have to show that your points are a little more matured, little more reflective of the discussion that has already been done, and then your points carries the discussion forward from there. They add something to the discussion. They cannot be as primitive as the second or the third point. So please be mindful of that. Uh, Prateek, I do not have any particular feedback for you as such. You got your opportunity to speak towards the end. Again, it was an okay point. It wasn't anything extraordinary, and that again matters because you were speaking for the first time towards the end. So there needs to be a greater degree of substance or greater degree of uniqueness in your points the more late you take your first entries. Or you can, it doesn't even have to be unique, you can just build up on a point that has already been made. So if a point has been made, you can extend it further, add meaning to it instead of just stating a pre-mentioned topic. So those were the general feedbacks. Conclusion, I think appropriate time was not laid out for conclusion by the group collectively. Of course, some people wanted to make their points, because of which the conclusion got a bit delayed. But yeah, so please keep this one thing in mind. When you're in a group discussion, it is often not a contest against your group members. You are evaluated as a group performance, like how did the group perform at whole. So if you think that speaking over someone and taking their turn would help you, it will not, because it will reflect poorly on the group. And it might very well be the case that the entire group will get rejected. So please be mindful of that. Also, the opposite of that would be if the entire group has done a really good, meaningful discussion, then in people with one meaningful entry would have high chances of getting selected. So it is not that you're competing against the people in your own group. It is the entire pool of candidates who have applied to that college that you are competing against. And you as a group collectively can get selected or can get rejected completely. So it's not like you have there will be only top two students selected from this GD, so you have to be in the top two. Don't go in with that mindset. You'll end up sounding a little more arrogant, competitive, and that's not where you want to be. So that was the general feedback. Any specific questions, please feel free to shoot.
Sir, I have a question.
Yeah.
सो मेरा क्वेश्चन ये था सर कि व्हेन समवन अगर मुझे कोई कट कर रहा है सर, बार बार मुझे बोलने की अपॉर्चुनिटी नहीं मिलती सर। 2 बार मैंने ट्राई किया था, तो 3-4 लोगों ने
Hmm.
फिर से फिश मार्केट क्रिएट किया और फिर उन्होंने बोलना चालू किया। तो फिर मैंने थर्ड में
Hmm.
मैंने ना एक एंट्री बनाने के लिए मैंने जोर से थोड़ा सा पोस्ट डाला कि मैं एंट्री बना पाऊँ। तो सर वहां पे मैं वैलिड हुआ कि मुझे एलिमिनेट हो जाना पड़ेगा, जैसे आपने पहले वार्निंग दिया था?
Right. So, being bold in your voice is not a problem, but if you're shouting, that is a problem. And if you're just continuously speaking for long, मान लो दो speakers हैं, पहला भी बस बोले
Okay.
जा रहा है, दूसरा भी बस बोले जा रहा है, that is a very big problem. So make sure you do not get into situations like those. If you find yourself getting into that situation, stop then and there, and then you have two options. Either let the person complete, or while they are speaking their point, very humbly ask them to let you make your point, and then they can take it from there. But do not keep speaking and speak in overlap with another person.
ओके सर। सर एंट्री मतलब कि जब तक अगले को कंप्लीट करने देंगे उसके बाद ही अपनी एंट्री बनाना।
करेक्ट, मतलब यू कैन ट्राई टू कॉन्टेस्ट व्हाइल एंटरिंग, बट वंस यू दो तीन वर्ड्स का आप मार्जिन ले लो। अगर दो तीन वर्ड्स के
ओके।
आगे भी लोग ओवरलैप कर रहे हैं, तो या तो आप उस पॉइंट पे जाने दो, अगली बार आ जाओगे। बट अगर आपको लग रहा है पूरा डिस्कशन ही बहुत कॉम्पिटिटिव है, देन उस पॉइंट पे आप बहुत बोल्डली बट हम्बली रिक्वेस्ट करोगे, कैन आई प्लीज क्विकली मेक अ पॉइंट, एंड देन यू कैन टेक इट फ्रॉम देयर। ऐसा करके बोल दो। अगर वो आपको अलाउ करता है, ठीक है। अगर आपको वो एक बार अलाउ नहीं करता है, तो आप बाद में दूसरी बार कभी ट्राई करोगे, दूसरी बार नहीं करता है, तीसरी बार ट्राई करोगे, तीन बार अगर आप रिजेक्ट हो, पहली बार तो नहीं होंगे, दूसरी बार अगर आप तीन बार रिजेक्ट हो रहे हो ऐसे बोल के, तो मॉडरेटर नोट कर रहा है। they'll probably either factor in your marks or they'll give you a chance at the end to speak. ठीक है?
ओके, थैंक यू।
Yeah.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
So the thing is that when certain points were spoken, the I was not trying to actually bully, but the whole point was to communicate that there are certain points that have already been spoken. So can we add some new points? And
You're not the moderator, Niranjan, right? So specifically, if you are in such a time crunch oriented GD, there are so many speakers and there are so many participants. There's so less time. In that, if you're actually taking up 10 or 20 seconds just to say that do not make repetitive points, that's just losing group's time. So you do not have to judge that. Let the moderator do that. If it's a very long discussion, let's say it's a 20-minute long discussion, and there are like five or six speakers, and speakers are giving repetitive points, at that point you can pitch in and say something like this. And once you've said this, then you also have to go on and back up your claim. Then you have to also bring in a fresh point. So you can say that yes, this is getting a little repetitive, we can discuss something in these directions, on these lines. So you'll also have to introduce a fresh point. You cannot just blame the group that it is getting repetitive. But again, that is for longer GDs, not for such a time crunch based GD.
but then how do we reach a conclusion if the points are being repeated again and again?
It is not mandatory to reach a conclusion. Like again, if the group has reached a common consensus and you want to conclude, great. But if the group has not really arrived at a common point, that's fine as well. When the time comes, when you actually have that last minute left, you can simply start with the summarization of the discussion instead of conclusion.
Was the conclusion fine?
Sorry?
Was the conclusion fine?
Was the conclusion fine? It wasn't outright wrong, but again, because a little less time was left out for it, it seemed a little hurried, and maybe it could have been a little more explanatory in terms of the points it covered. It could have covered a little more number of points, but whatever was mentioned, given it was already starting to exceed the time, in those constraints, it was okay.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir,
Any
this
other
is a
question?
particular suggestion from me.
Yeah.
Hello,
Any
am I
any
audible?
yeah, Hemant, that's Hemant, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah. Any you're asking any specific suggestions for you?
yes, yes.
Yeah. So I already mentioned one thing about the points that you made, a little more depth to it. So the committee point that you made. But again, a committee should be formed that to review content that is very like anyone, even a class 5 student can make that argument. But then who will be a part of that committee? What will they judge? What will they not judge? Who will they be reporting to? The nitty-gritties of it, the further detailing of it, which actually make your point sound credible, sound that it is actually a well thought point, not just a very superficial point. So try to go in a little more depth when you're trying to make points. And also, Hemant, you also like you weren't primarily involved in the heated discussions or like trying to come in, but you also seemed like a part of that group who wanted to barge in and take others' opportunities to speak. So try to disassociate yourself from the group, because what will happen is when the moderator is judging, they will identify these two, three, four people who are trying to take over the GD. And if you get associated with that group of people, it is very hard for you to then get selected. So try it. If you see that two people are repeatedly getting into tussles, and you are also speaking at that point or speaking alongside any of those people, stop right there. Distance yourself from that particular group because you do not want to be associated with them.
Okay, fine. I will
सर
work
एक
on it.
क्वेश्चन था मेरा।
Yeah. हाँ.
अच्छा, जैसे मतलब मैंने पहला मतलब एक बार तीन लोगों ने बोलने के बाद फिर मैंने स्टार्ट किया था, तो थोड़ा सा हीटेड हो गया, तो मतलब मैंने फिर लीव कर दिया था। मैंने कहा ठीक है। फिर उसके बाद दूसरी बार फिर मैंने एंट्री किया, तो फिर भी 3-4 लोग थे, तो देन मतलब मैंने ऐसा बोल दिया। प्रियल शायद मेरे ख्याल से उसने पहले बोली भी नहीं थी, तो मैंने कहा या यू कैन गो अहेड। दूसरी बार मैं मतलब ये बोल दिया, तो ये सही है ऐसा बोलना? और फिर उसके बाद तीसरी बार में फिर मैंने बोलने का किया, तो फिर 4-5 लोग बोलने लगे, तो फिर मैं बोलता रहा लास्ट तक। मैंने कहा मतलब इस बार मुझे बोलना है, तो ये सही है गलत है? और वो मैंने उसको अहेड दिया, तो मतलब दोनों का रिव्यू आप
ठीक
बता
है.
दीजिए।
Got your question. So पहली बात तो I observed शुरू में you were not getting chances to speak, and see, however you are feeling internally, that if that's not very pleasant, it should not actually get reflected in your GD or in your PI. I could clearly sense the disappointment in your voice when you said go ahead. तो मतलब वो दिख रहा था कि हाँ ठीक है, तू बोल ले भाई, कर ले तू, ऐसा टाइप का टोन था वो. इफ द मॉडरेटर सीज दैट इन यू, he'll simply see that हाँ ठीक है, you cannot even just have patience with people that you're working with. How will you lead teams? How will you manage teams? So do not show your disappointment that visibly. That's first. Second, just because you allowed people to speak in the previous turns does not give you the right to then go on and hijack the arguments of others at a later point. तुम्हें उसके लिए compensate नहीं या over compensate नहीं करना है. You have to be a little more moderate about it. जैसे the instance with Priyal, I think she also stopped, and then you, like when she was already not speaking, at that time you said go ahead. At that point you could have just continued with your point because she had already stopped at that point, right? So उस point पे तुम उसको capitalize कर सकते थे, but because तुम्हें लगा कि अब इतना टाइम जा चुका है, मैंने पॉइंट्स नहीं बोले, तब तुम फिर आगे जाके बाकी लोग जब जेन्युइनली पॉइंट्स बोलना भी चाहते थे, जब वो भी बोल रहे थे, तब तुम भी बोलते चले गए. सो दैट वाज अ प्रॉब्लम.
ओके, मतलब
और
इसको सर
also
कैसे, और मतलब अल्टरनेट वेट क्या है मतलब पुट आउट करने का, मतलब जैसे
alternate way, there's no fixed like I cannot give you a schema or a blueprint कि ऐसा करो ऐसा मत करो. You'll have to try and understand बाकी लोगों का perspective. अगर आप बोल रहे हो, दूसरा पर्सन बोल रहा है, और like you can continue for 2-3 max 4 words, उसके बाद भी अगर साइड वाला बंदा चुप नहीं हो रहा है, आप रुक जाओ. आप बोलो कि like either let them speak, or if you have a very good point, politely request कि can I make a quick point please, ऐसा करके. एंड अगर आप 3-4 वर्ड्स बोल रहे हो, सामने वाला 3-4 वर्ड्स बोल रहा है, अब आप भी रुक गए, वो भी रुक गया, देन डू नॉट टेक दैट अपॉर्चुनिटी टू से कि प्लीज गो अहेड. तब तुम उस अपॉर्चुनिटी को ग्रैब करो एंड यू मेक योर पॉइंट दैट पॉइंट, उस पॉइंट पे. उस पॉइंट पे तुम दूसरे को क्यों एडवांटेज दे रहे
ओके,
हो? ठीक है, तो
मतलब वहां
यू
पे
हैव टू
अपन
बी
को,
लिटिल स्मार्ट अबाउट इट.
ओके,
या.
तो मेरा एक
गॉट इट।
क्वेश्चन था सर, और
हाँ.
सर मैं, जैसे मुझे सर एक दो पॉइंट था, तो जैसे कंटेंट रेगुलेशन को लेकर यंगस्टर के ऊपर मुझे टॉपिक पे लगता है कोई ना कोई बोलने वाला था। तो इस बीच मुझे क्या करना चाहिए? किसी को बोलने का वेट करना चाहिए कि पहले से अपॉर्चुनिटी को ग्रैब कर लेना चाहिए? क्योंकि काफी सारे लोग इस पर टॉपिक पे बोलेंगे, तो मैं चाहता हूँ
राइट,
मुझे
राइट.
तो पता है इसके बारे में, तो मैं क्या
राइट, गॉट
करूँ
योर
उसको
पॉइंट.
पहले
गॉट योर पॉइंट, गॉट योर पॉइंट. तो अगर आपका पॉइंट बहुत ही सुपरफिशियल है, बहुत ही बेसिक है, देन ट्राई टू कम इन अर्ली एंड मेक योर पॉइंट. अगर आपका पॉइंट एक्चुअली वेल थॉट आउट है, यू थॉट ऑफ मल्टीपल लेयर्स टू दैट, आपके पास एग्जाम्पल है, आपके पास केस स्टडी, आपके पास डेटा है, डेटा भी नहीं है तो अगर आपके पास फर्दर डेप्थ है कि अगर ये होता है तो उसके बाद ये होगा, फिर ये होगा, अगर इफ यू हैव द डेप्थ ऑफ थिंकिंग, then you can actually allow people to make that point or even take the discussion forward and then chip in later. But अगर आपके पास ज्यादा बोलने को नहीं है, बस आपके पास वो पॉइंट ही है बोलने को, और उसके आगे
जी
एक दो चीज आप बोल दोगे, तो आप कोशिश
जी
करो
सर।
शुरू में बोल दो और खत्म करो, ताकि बाद में वो रेपिटेटिव ना लगे.
बहुत सर, बहुत सारे लोग काटने लगे तो सर, बहुत सारे लोग इसको ओवरवेलमिंग करने लगे, तो फिर क्या करो उस टाइम?
राइट, सो देयर विल बी पॉइंट्स जो आपने सोचे हो बट कोई और फिर ले जाएगा. दैट्स व्हाई
ओके
यू विल
ओके
हैव टू ऑलवेज कम अप विद मल्टीपल सेट ऑफ पॉइंट्स. आप जो हम लोग
ओके।
फ्रेमवर्क्स की बात करते हैं, स्पेल्ट, SPELT, तो सोशल, पॉलिटिकल, इकोनॉमिकल, एनवायरमेंटल, एथिकल, फिर लीगल, टेक्नोलॉजिकल, यू हैव ऑल दीज डायमेंशंस टू थिंक फ्रॉम. तो इन सारे एरिया से अप्रोच करो प्रॉब्लम को. हर एरिया से आपको एक एक पॉइंट तो कम से कम मिल ही जाएगा. So you'll always have multiple points to talk about.
ओके सर।
Yeah.
सर मेरा एक क्वेश्चन है, जैसे मैंने पेरेंटल
Hmm.
लिमिटेशंस वाला बोला था, तो वो पॉइंट रेगुलर लाइक और रेलेवेंट था इस डिस्कशन के लिए, या कुछ और
Can you please repeat your point?
I said that parental regulations, like parents should be stricter with their children, what their children see, and like वो क्या देखते हैं उसके ऊपर थोड़ा सा stricter regulations होने चाहिए घर घर के अंदर ही.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that was valid. Should online be content be regulated था motion. उसमें ये नहीं लिखा था कि regulated from the government end या at a domestic level. तो ठीक है, वो scope था उसमें discussion का. But again, your point did not get picked up by the group. तो
हाँ.
that can happen due to two reasons. या तो आपने उस पॉइंट पे उतना emphasize नहीं किया था कि ग्रुप को इंटरेस्टिंग इनफ लगे to take that point forward. Because if you introduce a point and then the group discusses on it further, that's a positive point for you. Because आपने इतना अच्छा पॉइंट बोला कि ग्रुप उसको कैरी फॉरवर्ड कर रहा है. सो यू, अगर अच्छा पॉइंट है, ट्राई टू गो फॉर दैट. सो इधर इट माइट बी द केस कि आपने इतना डेप्थ बिल्ड नहीं किया उस पॉइंट में, विच आई थिंक वाज द केस इन योर इंस्टेंस. नहीं तो ऑल्टरनेटिव रीजन कुड बी कि आपका पॉइंट लोगों को समझ ही नहीं आया, तो इसलिए फिर किसी ने उठाया ही नहीं, या उनको उसके बारे में नॉलेज ही नहीं थी तो इसलिए उन्होंने उठाया नहीं. तो उस केस में दिस नॉट अ लॉट यू कैन डू, स्पेशली इतने टाइम क्रंच वाले जीडीज में. लंबे जीडी में यू कैन इवन टेक सम टाइम टू एक्सप्लेन व्हाट यू एक्चुअली टॉकिंग अबाउट, बट छोटे जीडीज में उसका आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते. बट आपके केस में क्या हुआ कि दैट पॉइंट डिड नॉट गेट पिक्ड अप बिकॉज यू डिड नॉट सफिशिएंटली बिल्ड ऑन इट. तो थोड़ा और उसको क्रेडिबिलिटी से बिल्ड करते तो शायद वो और अच्छे से आता पॉइंट. द पॉइंट
हाँ,
वाज वैलिड बट.
मैंने सिर्फ ऐसा बोला था कि चाइल्ड्स एजुकेशन स्टार्ट्स विद हिज होम, तो इसलिए पेरेंट्स को लाइक रेगुलेशंस रखनी चाहिए चिल्ड्रन
करेक्ट, हाँ. वही ना, एक लाइन है तो लाइक.
एक दो
अब आप सोचो, अगर किसी और ने ये पॉइंट बोला होता, व्हाट वुड यू ऐड टू दिस? देयर इज नॉट अ लॉट टू ऐड टू इट, राइट? सो यू हैव टू गिव पीपल हुक्स कि हाँ, उससे फिर ये भी हो सकता है, इस बारे में आप बात कर सकते हो, इससे फिर ये भी रेपरकशन हो सकता है, इस बारे में आप बात कर सकते हो. तो ये दो तीन आपको हुक्स छोड़ने पड़ेंगे सो दैट पीपल एक्चुअली कैच ऑन टू इट. जिसके पास पॉइंट नहीं भी है, इफ दिस इज अ जनरल फीडबैक फॉर पीपल हु हैव टेकन अ लॉट ऑफ एंट्रीज इन अ जीडी, अगर आपको लग रहा है कि आपने काफी एंट्रीज ले ली, तो आप ऐसे भी पॉइंट्स छोड़ सकते हो आपके कि आपका पॉइंट आपने स्टेट कर दिया, उसके आगे दो तीन कनेक्शंस स्टेट करके छोड़ दो कि इसके आगे हम लोग इस डायरेक्शन में भी देख सकते हैं, ये भी देख सकते हैं, ये भी देख सकते हैं. एंड फिर जो लोग हैं जिनके पास कोई पॉइंट ही नहीं है बोलने के लिए, दे माइट एक्चुअली कैच ऑन टू इट कि हाँ, उनको भी पॉइंट मिल गया और उन्होंने आपकी बात को कंटिन्यू फॉरवर्ड किया. सो यू
ओके.
कैन डू दैट. या.
सर एक
एनी
छोटा
अदर
सा डाउट
क्वेश्चन?
था मेरा.
हाँ जी.
सर जैसे मतलब कई बार क्या होता है कि कोई भी मेंबर है, तो वो मतलब उसका टॉपिक से कनेक्ट नहीं है, मतलब वो थोड़ा समझ आया तो
करेक्ट
समझ में नहीं आया। फॉर एग्जांपल माई सेल्फ ही,
करेक्ट
जैसे कोई सामने वाला बंदा, उसको समझ में नहीं आया, वो बोलना चाह रहा है कि मुझे बोलना है, और वो थोड़ा फंबल
हम्म
भी कर रहा है, तो और वो थोड़ा सा लिटिल बिट टेक अ टाइम ले लिया, उस बंदे ने 40-50 सेकंड तक बोले जा रहा है, तो उसमें हमको
हाँ
पेशेंस ही रखना है, इंटरप्ट नहीं करना बीच में, कि उस क्या करना है।
अगेन फॉर लॉन्गर जीडीज जिनमें पर स्पीकर मिनट्स ज्यादा हों, उसमें आप वेट करो, दैट्स आइडियल, अनलेस दैट इज हैपनिंग ओवर एंड ओवर अगेन, बार बार कर रहा है देन यू हैव टू इंटरप्ट एट सम पॉइंट। बट अगर एक ही बार दो ही बार कर रहा है तो लंबे जीडीज में इट्स ओके। फॉर द शॉर्टर जीडीज लाइक दिस वन, इसमें if the entry is say 30-40 seconds long and it has happened only once, then let it go. But if it is starting to exceed 50 seconds wala mark, or if it is happening more than once, you are seeing a pattern with that person, उस point पे आपको politely interject करना पड़ेगा। तो like it will also show the fact that you're listening to others and you're realizing कि हाँ भाई ये थोड़ा फ्लफ कंटेंट बोल रहा है, वी नीड टू गेट द डिस्कशन बैक ऑन ट्रैक। उस केस में अगर आप मॉडरेट करते हो दैट विल बी ओके, दैट विल नॉट बी टेकन एज समथिंग नेगेटिव, इनफैक्ट पॉजिटिव ही होगा। बट वो आपका जजमेंट बहुत सही होना चाहिए कि ए इसका कंटेंट एक्चुअली फालतू है, रेलेवेंट नहीं है, गैस है, वो आपका अजम्पशन सही होना चाहिए। और दूसरा, पहली बार में नहीं, अगर पहला बार ही बहुत लंबा हो गया, 1 मिनट से ऊपर हो गया, 50 सेकंड से ऊपर हो गया तब, या फिर अगर वो मल्टीपल बार ऐसा कर रहा है तब, इन दो केसेस में आप करो।
अच्छा, तो